Good morning. This is Melinda McClymans, and I am hosting today's podcast, Keys to Understanding the Middle East, brought to you by the Middle East Studies Center at Ohio State University. And today's guest is Leslie Ferris. So I am just really pleased to have you here, Dr. Ferris.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, and I'm going to give you a brief introduction and then an overview of what we'll be talking about for the next hour. So,
okay, that sounds good.
Awesome. So, yeah, hopefully we'll get some people on Facebook joining us live. And if not, I hope you're catching us on the podcast, wherever you get podcasts. Today's July 7th, 2021, and I am hosting Professor Leslie Ferris. She's a distinguished arts and humanities professor of theater emerita at Ohio State University of the Department of Theater, Film, and Media Arts. She also directed our project On the Front Lines, and it's still an ongoing project that stages women's voices from Afghanistan. And she's done international theater work and research on women in theater that has greatly impacted not only the research, the literature, but our curriculum at Ohio State University and student experiences of diverse cultures. So she co-founded and directs plays for Palindrome Productions. Excuse me, a little bit of a tongue twister there. And that's a London-based theater company. She's actually live from London right now.
Yes. And this is where I am now since I'm emerita. I've moved back to my London home. Yeah.
Yeah. So she has a foot in both cultures, both the U.S. and the U.K. And so does her family. So totally international to the core. Yeah. And so obviously those works are staged in Britain. She's a truly international scholar, and she's facilitated authentic cultural engagements in Britain, Iraq, Palestine, Afghanistan, and many more since becoming a professor at Ohio State University. On the Front Lines, the project to bring Afghan women's voices to the stage marked a turning point and an evolution of theater and cross-cultural learning at Ohio State University. It brought the voices, lived experience, and cultural context of Afghan women to Ohio State's campus and the world. And it was met with immense interest and enthusiasm. And I was witness to that because I was able to support that and was honored to be able to work with Dr. Ferris.
Yes, you were a key player with me, and I couldn't have done it without you.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's just such a pleasure to have you and to be able to have a focused conversation about your work. And we'll spend most of the hour just discussing your work. And then I want to make some time at the end just to hear about what you're working on now. Maybe some things you want to share with the audience, like resources, whatever, you want to share that you're busy with, you're excited about. I'm sure there'll be some gems in there.
Yeah.
So let's focus on Palindrome, your theater company in London.
Yes.
Palindrome examines historical moments, sort of re-examines historical moments and brings them to life through theater. I wonder if you could talk about, especially Land with No People, because it has to do with the Middle East, has to do with the history of Israel-Palestine. And just, as the director of that performance, I'd be really interested to hear how you dealt with like the different perspectives and kind of humanizing people on all sides. And because it really affected people. Like if you read the reviews, people said they, kind of felt empathy and people were crying at the production. So it's really intriguing.
Yeah, it was amazing. And it did have a full month run, which not everything I've done has. They always have live performances several times or whatever, but never for 4 weeks. So a lot of people did come to see it. And I should say it's written by Brian Rotman. It's the only play in my current work that's by a man. All the rest is all the other plays that I've produced since Palindrome production are by women. And the playwright Brian did a huge amount of research on the history of Britain's relation to Palestine, and he learned a lot. He was doing it in well, the production was 2015. He was doing it in 2014 because at that time, during that year, there was another violence between the Palestinians and the Israelis. So he was just very, very upset about it. He followed the news from there and things like that. And he just decided, I want to understand why. What is the history of this? So he did lots and lots of research and also consulted very numerous other people. It was interesting because one of the problems that he had, which was resolved, was that he had a lot of British characters. He had a lot of Israeli characters that were real, and he even had people like, uh, one of the Churchill, yeah, because he was a member of Parliament, and He debated with a lot of other members of Parliament about the status of Palestine.
Mhm.
Um, so so Brian used a lot of verbatim theater, it's called verbatim theaters, where he actually had the speeches from the Churchill discussion, and he lifted actual text from that and used them as he did with some of the other parts as well. Um, that one of the issues was that he couldn't find in what he was doing, he just could not find a Palestinian character. I mean, someone, not a real person that he could include, because really this was very based on real people. So he met various people to ask them, and they said, "Oh yes, you can't even do this thing without that." So he did meet some specialists in it, and he discovered, he discovered that there was at least this one family, that Palestinian family that was very involved in politics. Uh, and yeah, so the daughter and the father became characters in the play. And again, some of the text was verbatim.
Oh, wow. So he was able to find a historical record of them
It was
and
really great.
integrate them.
Mhm. And I suppose one other thing that was also amazing was the discovery was that he found an article. It was in the Chicago newspaper. It was covering um, an event during the troubles, so to speak, during the violence that was going on there. So, like, since it was probably in the late 1940s, since 48 is when they became known as Israel. That
Mhm.
was 1948. So the play ends in 1948 when that happens. And yeah, so he found an account of a young girl, a young Palestinian girl. Her whole family had been um, really killed in the various battles that were going on, and but she survived, and she was in a hospital somewhere, and she was interviewed, and she described what it was like to lose her family. And I really wanted to have her as a character. Um, and I should say that there are lots of characters in this play. Um, and I only had 5 professional actors, so they did multiple roles. And we just did it in front of the audience in a certain way that made them that they understood.
Mhm.
Um, it was very simple, and it was very clear because they performed putting on a new hat and actually said the name of who they were at that time. But for the child, the designer made me a puppet that was like knee high.
Oh,
Like,
wow.
Boon Raku puppets are like this, where the person who's manipulating it stands right there behind them.
Mhm.
Um, and so that was one of the tearful moments when she spoke, because the actress spoke for her, but she was manipulating her, and it was very powerful. Yeah, so it's 5 actors playing multiple roles, and basically the performance, I mean, once the reviews got out, we were very full. It was a small theater, but nevertheless, it was very full and active. And I was very impressed and just was taken aback that on at least two occasions, people came up to me, an elderly gentleman came up to me, and he said, I was here last night to see this performance. And it's the first time I've seen anything that tells me what this battle, this war was, this violence was about, because his father was based. He was in the military then, and he was based in Palestine. And the Israelis bombed the building they were in, and his father died, was killed. So he was an elderly. I mean, so it was so moving, absolutely moving. And there's at least one other example of that too. So I like, how did they find out there was a play on? I was like, I mean, obviously there was publicity and stuff, but you just never know. But it was, yeah. So yeah, that was important. Yeah,
Yeah, that would really mean a lot after all I know how much work goes into,
yeah,
finally staging a play. And
yeah.
could you what was your experience like directing it?
Um, well, it took a long time to cast it. I remember I wanted 5 actors, and I knew I definitely had 4, 2 women. I mean, I auditioned them, and one of the ones that auditioned was Palestinian British.
Mm.
So that I mean, not that I just said, "Oh yes, you have to be in this" or whatever, but I was in my head thinking it, and he did a great audition, so he agreed to accept the roles. Um, yeah, and my fifth character was actually someone from Ohio State, or my fifth actor, professional actor, which is Sifiso Matsibuko, who's from South Africa. And he's just a wonderful performer and can do accents and everything. And now he was playing Aaron Burr over here in Hamilton.
Oh, wow.
After that, he started doing other things, and that was obviously he moved on from the smaller scale production.
Wow. Yeah, that's a huge
I
play,
know, yeah,
Hamilton.
I know, incredible. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that was great. So yeah, we got reviews, as I said, and lots of discussion. Yeah, I don't know if I should say any more about it.
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess,
Oh, I could say one more thing is that it had 5 performances a week. I think that was right. And uh, at least 2 of those nights every week, we did what was called afterwards, a post-performance discussion.
yeah.
And we invited guest speakers, at least 2. Um, and some were, I mean, they were people that were invited were like journalists and um, Israelis that lived in the UK, and things like, I mean, Palestinian folks and stuff. So they had these, and there was, in addition to the 2 speakers, there was a moderator that was not from the company. So yeah,
Do
so I
you
mean that was useful. A real discussion, real discussion that took place.
do
Mhm.
you think the emotions that were elicited by the performance, um, do you think that they affected that conversation?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, yeah. Maybe not for everybody, but enough to, yeah, definitely. Mm.
I think that emotions can do one of 2 things. They can either make people engaged, or they can make them so upset that they aren't able to remain
Yeah,
civil in conversation. So I'm just curious how,
yeah,
what was the tenor of that conversation?
yeah. I do think some people came there expecting something else, and they were probably not happy. I mean, not completely happy. Um, Yeah, but it did it like I said, twice a week, and it gave an opportunity for people to stay and ask questions and things like that. Um, yeah, just yeah, I've just lost my thread of something else there, but yeah.
So why were some people, I mean, what were they expecting that they didn't get? Like, was it,
Well, I think I think it was some people wanted a statement that was either totally pro-Palestinian to pro-Israel. They didn't
right?
like they didn't like when you start to look at history, it's not like that, right? So the historical narrative is the actual what happened is very different from one-sidedness. Yeah.
Exactly. And I think also the play connected to, and I haven't read the whole play, but it connected a lot to British history and European history in World War II and
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
Holocaust.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. There's a scene about the Holocaust, a very brief but powerful scene about the Holocaust. So it
Yeah,
wasn't.
I think those things, and this is called Keys to Understanding the Middle East podcast, in part because having historical moments as a starting point for conversation, I think is really important to
Yeah,
have a more nuanced conversation. And I guess I should also just acknowledge that the historical record has more of the voices of um, kind of the Israeli side, so to speak, and less of the Palestinian side. So that, that's always a struggle. So I
yeah,
can see why some people would be disappointed, because it's just that's just a struggle in general when we're talking about that history and
yeah,
trying to get,
definitely.
yeah, trying to get a better understanding of it.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, but that is super important, and also just understanding um, the British history of Palestine before it became Israel in
yeah,
1948.
yeah,
So
absolutely.
that's great. That's such an important time period that I always try to include if I'm teaching about that part of the world and for understanding.
Yeah, exactly.
And I mean, I really like how the play shed light on perspectives.
Mhm.
And I want to go into just the idea of perspectives and how, there are certain perspectives that are harder to access. Like it's not just, in terms of like groups having more power, it's also in terms of gender in some cases. And
Yeah,
kind of extreme case is Afghanistan. And so that brings us to um, Sahar Speaks,
right.
and the idea that female reporters can shed light on dark. This is a quote of Amy Ferris Rotman, who is the facilitator of these stories of actual women in Afghanistan telling stories, their own stories. She says female reporters can shed light on dark corners where men can't go.
Yes, right, exactly. Yeah, so this is bringing me to the Sahara Speaks project then. She set up, which became a theatrical project too. Um, so she set up, well, she was based in Afghanistan for full 2 years in Kabul, covering events there um, for Reuters. She was working for Reuters then. And she was very concerned that there are Afghan women journalists in Afghanistan, but the Western press was never using them. They used male Afghan men, but never women. So, and here's an example of what happened. She she was going to cover a rock concert for women, and what that meant was only women can go to this. Women journalists can go to this, not males. And so she wanted to cover it, and they agreed, and she said, "Well, I need a photographer, and I need a female photographer who's Afghan." And Reuters said, "No, you have to use one of the men." So she wrote the story, but it had no photos, and that just really upset her. Um, so that's why she set up
So
she
was Reuters not aware of Afghan culture and the strict gender
well, of
role?
course, well, you would think they would be, but it didn't, the men in charge didn't thought, "Oh, it's only one guy gonna come in and take a photo," that kind of way of seeing it. So,
Okay.
yeah, you would think, but
You would think, I mean,
yeah,
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 especially since they're known for international press.
yeah. So, as a result of that, she came up with an idea for, training Afghan women journalists to write for the Western press. And because she felt like the only way to give them voice, they're doing it in Afghanistan, but not outside that uh, arena. So she set up this organization called Sahar Speaks, and the first, which was to, and she worked with a lot of other women journalists around the world, and each woman was trained by her, and plus other women that came to help in the training, other women journalists, and they wrote stories in English for different news for the Western news, and she had to have partners for that. So she had there's two strands of this. One is every journalist had a woman mentor that was not Amy, a woman mentor from wherever in the world. Amy would contact people and said, "Could you please help with this?" And then the other component is to find out where are the stories going to be published. So she had the first round of 12 stories was published in the Huffington Post. And when that was published, it was the online, obviously online. Later, the Guardian took over. So I think there's about 25 women in total over 3 years that were trained and were writing for the
Mhm.
West. So, but the two main ones were, however, a number of them got asked to write for other things like Al Jazeera, um, various other press outlets. Um, and that was when they were doing it kind of on their own. Once they got some publications, then they could start doing it on their own. Yeah, so I read those first 12 stories and I was like, wow, I'm so impressed by these. They're just really something. And I went to Amy and I said, I'd love to get some of those stories adapted for the stage. And she just went like, what? No, I don't think so. I don't think so. I said, well, you think about it for a while. Um, and I kept kind of bugging her about it. And finally she said, well, okay, I said, well, let's pick the three from that group that you think. I mean, I knew what I thought. And so we did. And yeah, and I organized three playwrights. I interviewed masses of people for the playwrights. Um, they were all the playwrights came from diverse backgrounds. Unfortunately, I did try and find some Afghan women playwrights in the UK, but I couldn't. I just could. I mean, there was just no. We tried, but it didn't work. So, and then uh, there was a kind of this. The project was that you would adapt the playwright would adapt the story no longer than 30 minutes, and you could only have two women in the piece. Now, two actors, two female actors. Now, what does that mean? It means you might want to have five characters, maybe some of them men, but most of the others women, but only two women are there to perform those roles. And that was great. It worked. So that was, I remember one of them had like, it was a comparison of a mother and daughter. A couple of them were autobiographical. and yeah, it was so they just changed their hats, went on and did, and and were very, if you have good actors, they do that.
Changing the
So
hat. Yeah.
yeah,
Did you get any male characters acted out?
yeah, in one particular piece, yeah, yeah.
And then
Well,
I'm
go ahead.
curious, because you had, I mean, there were 25 stories in the end, and you were reviewing 12, I guess, when you first started talking about it. Was there a story you would really wanted to use, but it didn't end up getting used, or
No, I
was that
mean,
conversation like?
I don't think so. I don't think so. I'm just trying to remember. I mean, I felt I could go. Well, the thing is, I had to have a limit. I couldn't just keep producing short plays. You know what I mean? Commissioning short plays. I think as I produced and commissioned it, I did not direct anything, it was the first time I hadn't directed for my own company, and I actually liked that. Right? It was yeah, it was it was really useful to go to move away from the other that artistic part of it. So that was the first three plays were done that way. Then in 28, that was 2017. Excuse me. And in 2018, Amy managed to find an Afghan woman playwright, which was amazing. And she lives in Sweden. I mean, one of the things that's happened is so many of Afghans have left the country, um, to because of the what was happening there. So she lived in Sweden, and and why she left was she was a playwright, and she performs as well, and she could see that this wasn't gonna, she couldn't survive there. So yeah, so Monira, her name is, and so I got a grant from Ohio State to bring her from Sweden for a kind of 10-day residency. And before she got there, I sent her one of the stories from Sahara Speaks, and she adapted it. And we did a stage reading. It was just a one night stage reading, but it was very full. And then we also, because she's an actress as well, she acts as well. So she also did excerpts from a really powerful solo work she has, which was great. So yeah, and she gave a talk and things like that. So it only had that one stage reading and her own performances. And what I'd love to do um, is to bring her and produce her for the play, that her solo piece she does, where she plays multiple
Hmm.
characters. So that was number 4. And then number 5 and 6 were ones from Ohio State. And was part of this big project you and I did together. And again,
Yes.
I found an Afghan playwright for one of them. That was amazing because she contacted my daughter because she'd heard from someone about the project. And
Oh,
that
right.
was
Okay. And
Nushin.
was she in uh was she in London?
Her husband is she lives in LA, Nushin, but her husband is British from the UK. They teach at one of the universities in Southern California. So
Okay. Wow, that's
yeah,
amazing.
I
That's so
know.
cool
So
that you're able to.
she was in London
Mhm.
working. And there was a stage reading of a full length play she'd done, and that's why she was there. And that's where she heard about our project. So that was great. And then the other playwright is a woman. Is a playwright, an accomplished playwright, who from London, and she came to see our plays and was really intrigued by them. So I approached her, and she said that was Bano, Ali
Mhm.
Abano, sorry. And yeah, so the 2 plays we did um, in Columbus, Ohio, and now there's 6 of them. So there's
Yes.
plays, yeah.
And so did you direct the first ones and
No,
then
I didn't do any directing.
any of
This
them?
is
Okay, okay.
all those I didn't do it.
And you said that you found that to be a positive experience.
Yeah, yeah, because I was making the thing happen, and if I wanted to spread the wealth, so to speak. I mean, So I hired directors. I hired women directors.
Mhm.
I hired women costume designers. I hired women lighters, lighting people. Um, and it was great.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, and it just gave them that experience and opportunity.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's amazing. I mean, because those plays were really popular in Columbus.
Yeah, and
They
I
like
did get
sold out, and
yeah,
people were really talking at the reception, I remember, and asking about,
absolutely.
asking questions about the background and how it came to be, and saying that they really not only learned about Afghanistan, but were curious to learn more, like get different perspectives. I think there's something really powerful
Mhm.
about the authenticity of, you know, using the creative force of the country that you're staging, or you're,
Yeah, exactly.
sharing. Like the culture you're
Yeah.
sharing should come from the thinking and the culture and the actual people of that place. And that's
Mhm.
such an important approach. So
Mhm.
yeah, maybe you could talk about that, but in connection to feminism, especially, like
Oh, right.
Afghan feminism. Like, what's your perception of Afghan feminism or Afghan women's rights?
Well, I historically, they haven't had many rights, and when, um, NATO and, uh, the US came in to the country, for the first time, a lot of them were getting to go to school, and things like that, so their lives were changing, and in fact, but there was a time before, like, one of the plays by one of the based on the story by one of the Afghan women was the story of a mother-daughter. It was autobiographical. So her mother went to university and studied, and then the daughter, um, she had trouble getting in, and
Yeah,
the American soldiers were there at that time, and they were, so it was comparing their education in the play, which was really interesting. That was one of the things in any case.
that's
So
yeah. And just for our audience, they might not know that Afghanistan has gone through different stages that have really been like uh, paradigmatic shifts, like in
yeah,
terms of women's education. So, like
yeah,
in the 60s, people were going to Kabul, Afghanistan, like it was on the hippie trail, like it was
yeah,
like a tourist destination, and just like, very very free, and kind of,
mhm,
lots of like almost like a typical college image of going to university, where like men and women could meet and mix and everything like that, like completely different. And then with the different invasions and then reactions, and then like ultimately when the Taliban became the actual government in the 90s, that's I think where it really hit a low in terms of women's education. So it's like dramatic shifts between, what
yeah,
you would find there. So clarify
exactly,
for the audience, that's why the mother would have had such a different, so that
exactly.
play would cover that. Yeah, because the mother went to college kind of no problem, and then the daughter really struggled. So
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, right. So I mean, the thing with that project is I don't know when it'll happen, but I hope it maybe within the next 2 years that I could produce all 6 plays together for an evening and a matinee. I mean, actually have a run and have them perform because they were meant to be experimental, like trying them out.
mhm.
Either stage reading that Nushin did, but then we did a full kind of semi-production in Columbus, and then we did the semi-production also in the first 3 plays. So, um, yeah, so I'd love to get now there's 6 plays. What happens when they're all together,
Yeah,
right? Well,
yeah. And then you can also, yeah, you can sort of compare and contrast the stories and get into some
oh,
interesting
yeah. Yeah,
interesting
yeah,
perspectives.
because some of them, I think some people were surprised, some of them have a lot of humor in them.
Yeah.
They're not just all, "Ooh," right, yeah. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
I mean, dust allergy, like even the name is kind of
I
funny.
know. I know. Actually, that was the first time I even though, I didn't realize how bad the dust was there, that was yeah, dust that was just yeah, that was great.
Yeah, and you really get the details of life there and the circumstances, and it's
Yeah,
just awesome. It's just
yeah,
awesome.
yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah, so I was very happy that I have 6 really great playwrights, and 2 of them are Afghan. So and all the stories were original stories were so the plays are inspired by those original stories.
yeah, and they're Afghan, and those original stories are all Afghan women
Mm,
who were
yep.
living there. So that's really I think that's what touches upon what they care about, and
Yeah,
that's the
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
that's the goal. Like what do they find important about Afghanistan, not what outsiders feel important. Although it is good to put it in global perspective, and that's another thing that you've done a lot of work on, because you do have that. You not only bring in voices and like specific individual stories that show the circumstances of a culture, you also look at global and historical perspectives. So one of the things Dr. Ferris has worked on is The Great Game,
All
which is
right.
really important to know. Like if you want, like if hopefully after this podcast, if you want to follow up and do a little research, like just Google The Great Game, because it's about Britain and
Right.
Afghanistan as like kind of a pivot point between Britain and India, and like the struggle over Afghanistan between Russia and Britain.
Yeah.
So you actually you produced a play called The Great Game, correct?
No, I didn't actually produce the play.
Okay.
They wrote the play. It was called The Great Game: Afghanistan.
Okay.
And it was done by one of the a very inventive theater companies here.
Okay.
And it started. I gave a talk about. I've written about it, and I've given a talk about it in our conference that we had there. Um, but it's amazing because it was the Great Game Afghanistan, and it was in order to see the whole thing you would have to either go 3 nights in a row or just stay from morning, afternoon to night, and there'd be food breaks between all of those. So yeah, it started in the middle of the 1800s and was all based on historical material. And the artistic director of the theater, which was called the Tricycle then, it's changed its name now, but um, he used to always he's written about this that he always used to hear about Iraq, the war in Iraq, but there was also this other thing happening in Afghanistan. What's going on there? He felt like at the time, like whenever he was thinking about this, he said he didn't
Yeah.
really know what was happening and what the history is because he knew that UK had a deep history with Afghanistan. So yeah, so that's how that play came about, or that kind of lots of plays. I think there were 14, and yeah, they were amazing, and they were just absolutely amazing. And I know one year I was in charge of the London Theatre program, and students came over. Like we had, I don't know, like a dozen students, and they saw it too. So it was really something. And the show toured to the U.S. And the interesting thing about that is that uh, how can yeah, so it toured to the U.S. and it played at the Pentagon,
Wow.
which is just not literally at the Pentagon. They actually thought they might be able to. I mean, the Pentagon thought, oh, let's have them do it in our space, but I mean, it doesn't have any theaters, equipment or anything. So they hired another theater somewhere and did it, and then the Pentagon people came to see it. And yeah, Obama was involved in that, making sure that would happen, because a general over in UK, who was the British general of the British troops in Afghanistan, told um, saw the Great Game Afghanistan production, and he said, "I wish I had seen this before I got to Kabul, because then I just know so much more about what's happening."
Hmm.
So that was amazing.
Yeah. So I'll try to is what you wrote about it online, or is it in a publication? What publication?
Yeah, I'll have to tell you. I'll have to give you the issue, but it's called the Theater Journal.
Okay.
But I have to give you which issue it is, and I know the library has a Theater Journal.
Okay.
I'll tell you what issue and all that. Yeah.
That'd be great. Yeah, and I'll put it in the summary
Right.
after our conversation.
I did want to say one other thing about the first play I did with Palindrome,
Oh yeah.
which was called The First Actress. The First Actress.
Okay.
And it's a script. It was written by Christopher St. John, and you might think that's a male person, but it's not. It's female. She took on a pen name,
Okay.
and she was a historian as well as a theater person, and it was a suffrage play. And there was so much amazing theatrical work happening during the suffrage era, but by lots of different women, trying to get the right to vote. Uh, and there actually is so-called a first actress in the UK, in London, England, in England. They think, I mean, they found the name of one who was possibly that. And
But
so
the idea is there must have been one.
no, this was a real person.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And I'll tell you that. So you have to know a little bit of the history of Britain and theater. So I mean, obviously it's famous, right? There's Shakespeare, but just
Yeah.
imagine all of Shakespeare's plays were done with men only.
Oh,
So,
okay.
right, and
Wow.
that was it. That was it. Nobody. Yeah, that's it. So, so this notion that there's a first actress was just, yeah. And what happened? The reason there was one, and why there was women started to act finally, is that King Charles the second, his father was executed actually by the Puritans, and for
Wow.
20 years, I think, he was in charge. But then it kind of fell apart. But the son Charles, managed to escape to Paris,
Hmm.
and he stayed as a, as a still a royal person. And and as soon as the revolutionaries ended, Cromwell was the head of it. Um, he went back to England, and he'd been seeing women act in Paris and France for several years. So he said women should play their own roles,
Hmm.
although it wasn't a fiat or anything like that. He just said we need to have women playing the parts. But so what happened was the theaters opened again because the theater. I mean, what's amazing with this story is that the theaters, the Globe Theater. I mean, these amazing theaters where Shakespeare and also all kinds of amazing playwrights. It was so popular; everybody was going to them, etc. They were closed down because of the Puritan idea that you don't do that.
Wow.
It's
Like
against.
they were against theater?
Yep.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I used to when I was lecturing at Ohio State, I used to tell the students, I was talking about theater. I said, well, isn't it ironic that the people who founded our country are the ones who closed down the theaters in London for 20 years? Like,
Wow, that is.
yeah. So this play is really wonderful because it shows what happened. So the first actress is playing, I think it's the part of Desdemona, and she in one of the Shakespeare plays, and she comes off stage and she's really upset because people are booing and throwing things at her, but there's also people clapping.
Okay.
Um, so, but she's just overcome that
Yeah.
she happened, and there's a big discussion because she's been put on the stage by one of the royal guys who wanted to do this, but they only wanted to do this because some of the boy actors who played the women's roles were still performing. they came back and, when the theaters opened up, so it was interesting that there's both these worlds happening, you
Yeah.
know. Yeah. So so it wasn't about the actress herself. It was about his own, uh, he wanted to, because the boy actor was insulting him and making fun of him on stage. He wanted to get his own back. So yeah, it was just so. Um, so the first half of the play, and it's short. It's only like 45 minutes. So the first one is the first actress,
Okay.
and is so upset that she's failed. The men that have come to see her that are positive say, come, go out, let's go party, let's go drink. And she says, no, 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 I have to sit here for a while, I'll come later. And she just feels horrible and she falls asleep. She says a little monologue and falls asleep. Then the actresses of her history come to her. And
Okay.
the first one is Nell Gwynn. I mean, it's amazing. And they're like, I think there's 10 of them. And they're all these women from history that come to her and say, don't worry, because you started it, but we were after you. Don't worry, we were there, And it's just these little tiny speeches they have, the women, the actresses of
So
the
for
past.
her, they're from the future?
No, they're from the past.
Okay.
No, they're all from the past. They're all from the past. You wouldn't have known these. She was the first. So yeah. So the first actress is the first, so to speak. But then these women from history, our history, come
Okay.
and speak to her.
Okay.
And speak to her. And she's asleep. She didn't hear him. It's like she's having a dream, I suppose. It is a dream in a way. And the last one, however, this is I'm so impressed by this playwright. The last woman that comes does not have a character name. Her title is An Actress of Today. So this is 1911.
Wow.
I know. And she says, like, yes, that's what it was like back then. And even now, we're also fighting for the vote. It's a much more poetic thing that she says. She has a final monologue.
Yeah. Is that also kind of an ideal, like that it's now we're going to make this normal that women are acting? Yeah, they're acting.
Yeah. Like now they're acting. And look at all the centuries they've been doing it, or all the years they've been doing it since the theaters reopened. Yeah. So doesn't that mean that all this time we've been trying to get the right to vote? So we want that now.
Yeah. I mean, if you're able to represent yourself on the stage, you should be able to represent yourself in society through the vote and through.
Yeah. And what was really cool when I directed that is that actually we directed it at Ohio State. And that summer there was a conference that we did. I did it with Nina Couch on the actress, actually, the historical actress and stuff. And so I directed it there, and probably about half of the students in it were going in the London program. So this is how I did my first show as Palindrome Productions. Is I asked them if they would stay a week later, if they could stay a week later or 3 days later or whatever. I can't remember exactly what it was. And that we would do this. And I already had like 5 or 6 cast people, whatever. And then I did auditions for some British actors, women actors. And we performed it once in London. And the second time we performed it was in Ellen Terry's house. Ellen Terry was a famous 19th century actress. I mean, like, unbelievably famous. And actually, her daughter, who was also famous at the time, but she wasn't an actress, she was a director, and she directed the first actress.
Wow.
And Ellen Terry was in it.
Oh, so right. She was one of the people in the dream then?
Yeah. Ellen Terry was Ellen Terry was playing one of the actresses from history, but she wasn't playing herself. She was supporting the
Yeah.
suffrage movement, and yeah, so it's just, I know, I would like to see people studying theater actually read the play, or you know what I mean? You can get in your group and do it because it's this huge historical document that,
Like do kind of a reading where you're sort of acting it out.
yeah, I did
Mhm.
lots of stage readings in various places when I first discovered it. Um, After I first discovered it, because it's a huge important piece of history,
Yeah.
theatrical history. I mean, world history. Yeah.
And in reading it out loud and sort of simulating
Mhm.
play in a way, like it's
Yeah.
yeah, I think it would help
Yeah.
make it real and sort of help the learning and
Yeah. I know I did a stage reading of it in the faculty club one time with students. A lot of people came to see it.
that's fantastic.
Yeah.
So
So
you mentioned the London program. So that was sort of like a study abroad program that
yeah,
you
it was
led?
for, I set it up because when I came to Ohio State, there were no international programs for the Department of Theater at all, period. So I thought, this is crazy. We got to have some. So I
Yeah.
worked with international people who do that, and we set it up. Um, it probably didn't happen for two until the second or third year that I was there, you know, just because it takes time. And we ran it, I think, the first 2 years to get like 1 year, 2 year, but in but then we did it to kind of establish it, and then we did it every other year.
Wow.
Because there weren't, you know, but and we did attract students that were, well, obviously they were for theater students, but they, other students could have done it too, and sometimes they did, you know, other students from English or whatever. Yeah,
Hmm.
it was great. I just have to say, it was just so amazing.
What
They
did
would,
you enjoy most about it?
well, they get to see like 25 plays, and
Oh, wow.
we go overnight for 2 nights to Stratford upon Avon, where the Royal Shakespeare Company is.
Hmm.
So they get to see that, and yeah, it was amazing. Well,
Wow.
you know, especially if you've never been to the UK at all.
It's like double immersion. It's like play immersion plus
Mhm.
British
Yeah.
immersion, cultural immersion in
Hopefully it's
London.
gonna, yeah, I hopefully it's gonna start up again, um, in 2022, 2021. No, it is 21, 2022, yeah.
2022, exactly. Like, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, that's what we're
that's
hoping.
the hope, yeah.
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 So, yeah, so I love this notion of double immersion because I feel like in the plays, the perspective taking is like literal because sometimes, like, even if you're not actually acting, like you say, like if you do a reading where when you're reading the lines, you're sort of acting, it's
Yeah,
like real perspective taking, which is
yeah,
so powerful for learning cross culturally.
yeah, exactly. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, and so now we have not only do we have the study abroad experience, we have international theater courses at Ohio State as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, and they're now including Sahar Speaks plays.
Yay. Yes, they
So,
are.
so
Now
yeah,
we need to get them published so they can see them, all 6 of them. Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Mhm. Yeah.
That's a must.
Yeah, I remember that some of the undergrad students who came to, remember the talks of the 2 playwrights, Nushin and, Aliyah. They just, you know, they just were like, "Wow, these," you know, they asked good questions, and they, um well, they were getting a culture experience that was not the regular one to have in the middle of Ohio. Yeah,
Right, right.
yeah,
Yeah, that's fascinating. Like to get cultural immersion without, like it's sort of like virtual study abroad before there was virtual study abroad.
right. Yeah,
'Cause
exactly.
right, I'm working on virtual study abroad to Turkey right now, and so it's like on my
Wow, wow,
yeah,
wow.
yeah, very exciting. And there are a lot of Afghans there now and Persian speakers. I'm from Iran as
You were
well.
you mean at Ohio State?
No, in Turkey.
Oh, in Turkey. Oh, that's amazing. Oh, how fascinating.
Yeah, yeah. So I hope to connect them with Ohio State students studying Persian, and maybe theater students too, come to think of
Yeah,
it.
absolutely.
Yeah, that would be awesome. So, yeah, so what else are you working on right now? Like, what's keeping you busy these days?
Well, there's several things, but I suppose I do have a book. Well, I can't even speak. People ask me to write a book about Sahara Speaks, which I'll call not Sahara Speaks, but Voices of Women from Afghanistan. It's Cambridge University Press. So I've been working on that. Um, and I don't know. I'm doing the proposal right now, and I probably need another 2 weeks to finish it because it's been stopped for various reasons, since I started a month ago. So, but I feel like I've worked enough I've done it enough to know what the shape of it is. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So you have a process
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
book proposals.
Yeah. So I get the book proposal and then they decide whether, the people look at it and say, yes, we definitely want this or whatever. Well, they've asked me to do it, so I'm assuming they want it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
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 And they want you to not only talk about like what the perspectives are from the author's point of view, but do they want you to also talk about your own experience?
Yeah, I
Uh,
think so. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's interesting.
I will include that and in the proposal. Yeah. And I am including the Great Game of Afghanistan and also the 2012 Olympics. I don't know. There was amazing Afghan thing that happened there,
What's
which
that?
was in the so there was a cultural Olympics as well as the regular Olympics in 2012 in London,
Hmm.
and um, it was amazing that they did this project. It was the Globe Theatre, which is Shakespeare's Globe. It's called Shakespeare's
Hmm.
Globe, and it's in London
Okay.
on the South Bank. It's amazing. They tried to make it as if it might have been like his, but since they do have drawings of what it might have been like. Um, so the artistic director and various people thought, okay, this is the Olympics. It's all very international. So there's 36, maybe even 37. There's 36 Shakespeare's play. There's one that's contested whether he wrote the whole thing or not. But anyway, there's say 36. And we will ask people from all these different countries to direct, perform, and act with their actors,
Hmm.
their language. And they did this. It was amazing. And there was an Afghan company,
Nice.
and they did Comedy of Errors, which is
Okay.
a comedy. They chose a comedy. They realized they didn't want to take on the tragedies, but they thought, and there were two women acting, and that was the issue.
Oh.
Now, it just so happened that I was in London when that was on, and Amy was covering it for her journalism work, my daughter. So she got us tickets. It was completely packed,
Wow.
and it's a circle. It's a shaped. I mean, it's not. It's a circular space.
Hmm.
It's got every part of it, like 2/3 of it, and then the stage is at one end of the circle. And a lot of people were in seats. We were in seats up a couple rows or whatever. But there's the pit, it's called, where the people in the old day, like in the Shakespearean era, you couldn't afford to sit in the seats. So you stood on the ground in front of it,
Okay.
um, the pit. So it was packed with people in the pit. It is even normal now. I mean, now it is because the tickets are cheaper and all that kind of stuff. Um, so there were a lot of Afghans in the audience, and a lot of them were holding up their phones and videoing stuff. And of course, Comedy of Errors is a comedy, so they had and it was in Dari, They translated it Dari. So the Afghans in the audience heard heard it and just would laugh when the funny bits would laugh and laugh. But the other people in the audience, they did project the English on these two side walls.
Oh, okay.
You really didn't know the play very well or whatever, you could laugh too. And it
Yeah.
was so interesting because the first round of laughter was the Afghans. And
Uh-huh.
then right after that was the people who couldn't speak Dari.
Yeah. Wow.
Sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
Not a good idea to choke in a podcast.
Well,
Sorry.
no problem. No problem.
Okay. So I'm going to write about that in the book too.
Oh, that's fantastic. That and you said 2 women were acting, and I assume there were also men acting as well?
Oh, mostly men because, yeah.
Okay.
But the problem was that those women got huge negative responses from the men back home.
Yeah.
So they was worried about them that they might be threatened and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a factor, when dealing with women and creativity and performance, right? Like, it must be something you were constantly dealing with throughout this whole process.
Yeah.
I'm just concerned about the safety and then at the same time, I think it's really important for people to know, like, that there is a Afghan theater company, that there are Afghan women journalists, there are Afghan playwrights working in and outside of Afghanistan. I remember Nasheen Arbabzadeh's talk at Ohio State about Shakespeare in Kabul. It was like standing room only. People were really, really interested and intrigued by the creativity,
Sorry.
going on in Afghanistan. That's okay. Are you good to go? Should we wrap up? Do you want to wrap up? Because it is an hour, so I can just wrap up and just mention really quickly that Professor Ferris actually has a collection now. Like, there's a collection at Ohio State University's library named after Dr. Leslie Ferris and on women playwrights. So, we just touched the surface in the past hour. She's really done a lot of work to, not only in her research, but just to bring access to the sources through our library and through the plays and the courses and, just experiential learning in London and on pretty much, every major level at the university. So very impactful. And I'm going to type up a summary of what we talked about, and I'll include those resources on the Keys to Understanding the Middle East website, so that if people want to